Hi, I'm Emily from Life So Savory, and today I'm going to show you a fun and easy sewing project to make leggings with a skirt attached. This is a great project for summer because not only do you get a cute skirt, but you also have the leggings underneath for modesty and makes a great playwear. So these are perfect for little kids who want to wear skirts, but you're also just not sure about what's underneath. So you have a cute skirt, and then when you lift it up, the shorts are actually attached underneath. You can also make this for adults. This is an adult size skirt, and it also has the leggings underneath. So let's talk about a few options and ways that you can make this project yourself before we get into the actual construction. So the first thing that you will need is, of course, a leggings pattern that you like. There's a free pattern available on the site if you'd like, or you can use one that you've already have in your pattern library. From there, you're going to decide what kind of skirt you want to put on it. So for these skirts here, I have cut out a half circle skirt. And circle skirts can be drafted using your own measurements in any size that you want. So it's really quite easy to combine those two items to create this fun project. So you don't need a special pattern for this. You just need to kind of put together the tools that you already have to create this. Now, fabric is also something that you want to take into consideration when you're doing this, because you can't just use any fabric to make leggings. If you're familiar with sewing leggings, you probably already have some fabrics that you like to use, but I'll just tell you a little bit about the favorites that I have when I'm sewing leggings. So you want to make sure that you use a very stretchy fabric, and you also want to make sure that it's four-way stretch, which means that it stretches from side to side as well as from top to bottom. And that's very important when you are sewing knit bottoms, especially leggings, because they're going to stretch a lot, and you need that stretch. So this is double brushed poly fabric, which is a mix of fabrics. You can also use four-way cotton as long as it has that four-way stretch. So that's the most important thing. And you'll notice that on this one, I used a sports mesh, which I think adds a really cute little detail to this skirt, because one, you can kind of peekaboo see underneath the shorts, and so you can do those coordinating fabrics. But you also have the aspect where it looks fun and summery and is also light and airy for great playwear. So there's a lot of options that you have when creating this. Both of these are half circle skirts, which means they're not as full, but this project also works with a full circle skirt and is just a fuller skirt. So let's talk about actually making this and how you put it together. So I have already prepped some little short bottoms, and these were created from the free legging pattern, which again is available linked through the site. And I sewed up the center line, the inseam, and I did go ahead and hem these in preparation. So if we turn these right side out, we can see that they look like a cute little pair of knit shorts. Okay, the rise on the back is higher than the rise on the front, which is common when you are, making your knit bottoms. Now, when you're cutting out your legging pattern, the only thing that you're going to do differently is you are going to fold over the top 1 inch of the pattern. So before I cut this out, I folded over my pattern piece and eliminated the top inch. And the reason we do that is because we're going to add a waistband. Normally, if I was sewing leggings, I would sew up all the leggings and then I would add the elastic around the top, and I would just turn over my waistband and create that folded over elastic waistband. But I want to get rid of that top inch because on this sense, I'm going to add the waistband on top of the skirt. You can also add a yoga waistband, or on this one I added a contour waistband, which is a nice tight waistband made only of fabric with some clear elastic inserted in the top. So again, lots of options, but for this one we're just going to make the basic elastic waistband. So I have my 1 inch elastic already prepared and cut to size. I have my short bottoms already sewn up so they look like shorts. I have fabric to create the waistband, and we're going to cut this to size in just a minute. And then I have a half circle skirt already cut out of the fabric. And with a half circle skirt, you'll notice that there is a seam. Usually I put this on the back, but but because of the fabric that I was using, I actually have 2 side seams for this one. So our seams will be on the sides of our skirt when we sew this together. And usually when you're creating a circle skirt, you'll use your waist measurements. In fact, when I'm doing this project, I use the measurement of the top of the shorts. So when you're looking at your chart and creating your circle skirt or your half circle skirt, I just measure around the top of this so that it matches the skirt and the shorts, because that's what we want it to go together. So we need to create our waistband. So let's look at the top of the shorts. And both of these are stretchy, very stretchy knit fabrics. So we don't have to be super exact because the fabric is gonna stretch, which I love because it's very forgiving when you're doing this. So I'm just gonna measure across the top and mark on there where I'm gonna sew this waistband. Okay, so again, we don't have to be super exact, but we want to be pretty close. So now with right sides together, I'm going to turn the fabric over. We're going to match up where I marked with the pin, and I'm going to cut off that extra fabric, and then we'll sew up the short end of the waistband. Okay, so now let's take it over here to the serger. So this is a serger sewing machine, which is great for sewing knit fabrics because it has a stretchy stitch, which means, you know, when you see it on here, look at how stretchy that is. So your seams aren't gonna pop. This fabric can really be pulled and stretched, and it's great for kids because you get that flexibility in your seams. So you definitely wanna make sure that if you don't have a serger like this one, that you're using a zigzag or a knit stitch on your regular sewing machine so that these seams are all flexible and very stretchy. Okay. So we are going to sew through here. And another great tip, which I don't have on this one because, again, this is a stretch. This creates a stretch stitch. But if you're using your regular sewing machine, you can use stretch thread, you know, thread that's specifically designed to give more stretch in your seams to create those seams that are going to give you the flexibility that you want. All right, so now we have a waistband, we have our shorts, and we have our skirt. So let's put it together. So you take the shorts, and I'm going to match up the front and the back seams because I want to be able to match up the side seams that I created on my skirt. So when you're putting this together, you're going to envision it like you're wearing it. So right side out on the shorts, and then I'm actually going to put the skirt also right side out. Because if we think about, okay, we're wearing this, we look underneath, we want the shorts and the skirt to be layered just like this. Okay, and then you're gonna take your waistband, and I like to put this seam that I just sewed on the back seam. So I'm going to match up the 4 layers of fabric, the 3 items. I have my shorts, I have my skirt, and now I have my waistband folded in half. So the waistband, you're going to fold in half with the right side of the fabric out and the wrong side of the fabric tucked inside. So we're looking at the nice side of the fabric. And then we'll find the opposite half, and then we will pin the front of that waistband. So essentially we're just trying to quarter it around our project so that we can stretch and sew this all together. And this is where I often wish I had another hand to stretch and pin at the same time. But so we'll find the sides here, and then again I'm lining up. I have 4 raw edges of fabric, 2 of waistband, 1 of skirt, and 1 of shorts. And your waistband can be different widths depending on the elastic that you're using. I'm using 1-inch elastic, so I cut my waistband to account for that. So 1 inch for each side plus seam allowance. If you're using a thicker elastic or a thinner elastic, you would adjust for that, but I really like using the 1 inch. If you have a bigger project, you might want to stick more pins around here. Because this is so small, I can probably get away with 4 pins. Now, the thing I want to remember when I'm sewing this is that I'm catching all 4 layers of fabric, and that I'm leaving an opening to insert my elastic when I'm finished, okay? Because we want to be able to thread that elastic through the casing. So let's go ahead and sew this. I'm going to start on one side of this back seam, sew around, and then make sure I leave about a 2-inch opening to thread the elastic when I'm finished. And I like to kind of use a stop and start method where I'm sewing a few inches and then relining up all those layers to make sure that they're lined up the way that I want them to, and then adjust and sew a little bit more. And then make sure you're removing your pins. The serger does have a blade, which is trimming the fabric, and you do not want to run that blade into one of your pins. I'm not using a very big seam allowance here as I'm sewing. I'm really just trimming off a tiny bit of fabric to make sure that those 4 layers are all even. If you want to sew with a bigger seam allowance, you'll have to make sure that you've added that into when you're cutting your waistband to account for that. And I don't really have to stretch my fabric as I'm sewing, because ideally I cut all of these the same width, or they all have the same circumference. So unlike when you're inserting elastic like this and you have to do some stretching and pulling as you're sewing, I shouldn't have to do too much of that because all the layers should essentially be the same size. Okay, so make sure as you come around again to where you started, and you can tell by your seam there that you're going to move off of the fabric and leave that opening for turning. And then I'll remove this pin. So this is where you would want to check your waistband to make sure you did catch all the layers of fabric. And then you'll take your elastic, and you can either use a large safety pin or a bodkin to thread your elastic through the casing. Okay, so you're just going to go all around and put it through. And other finishing things that you want to be aware of is the shorts will need to be hemmed, but on all of these skirts, I did not hem the skirt because it's out of knit fabric and that won't fray. So you're able to get away with not completely hemming it. And when you have a circle skirt or a half circle skirt, it's a little more difficult to hem anyway. So I really like not being able to do that. Once you've got your elastic through, you are going to sew it with either, again, the serger or your regular sewing machine to complete the circle. And then we pull it into the casing entirely. So you can see I have my hole here, but the elastic is fully inside. And I'm going to now close that opening. So you want to, again, make sure you've lined up all 4 layers of those fabrics. And you're going to attempt to stitch this without catching the elastic really in your seam. But once you finish that, then essentially you can either, if you haven't hemmed your shorts, do it already, and you have a cute leggings with a skirt attached.